Hello and welcome back to Salute Your Sports. It is so good to be back talking sports. Epic 2-week European vacation. Saw my family, Grandpa's 90th birthday in Bulgaria. Saw Leo Messi, the GOAT, score a goal live and in person at PSG. Beautiful free kick. A lot of fun, but glad to be talking sports with you, Tom. A huge show today. The biggest talking point, maybe the biggest NFL regular season game of the year, maybe of the last 5-10 years. We got the Chiefs and Bills. They're both 4-1. We got the two best quarterbacks in the league, maybe the two best teams in the league. It's going to be awesome. We'll talk plenty about that. Also, Cowboys-Eagles matchup, a pair of big college football matchups, and we'll predict the MLB World Series, the NBA Finals. Basketball is back next week. So we have a lot of stuff to talk about today. I cannot wait to get into it, Tom. How have you been, and how are you doing going into the show?
I'm doing fantastic. It has been a little too long since we've talked sports. A lot of things have changed. A lot of things have kind of come up, and there is, close your eyes, throw a dart wherever that dart lands. We've got a great sports topic to take on. And of course, as you said, leading up the show, Chiefs and Bills. I mean, how much can we even hype up this game already? Obviously, AFC Championship last year, they met in the semifinals. Or no, they met in the semifinals last year. They met in the AFC Championship game 2 years ago, I believe. This has been a matchup that just keeps on happening. NFL schedule makers are more than happy, of course, to be putting that on our schedules. This is perhaps going to be the most exciting game since perhaps Rams and Chiefs when they had that, 45-41 game a few years back. This could be the most insane regular season game that we've seen in a while. Of course, now having said that, it's going to be like a 13-7 dud. But we will get into some of the keys on that. I mean, that I think is a fantastic place to start, as both teams have gotten up to pretty strong starts. Buffalo coming off of an absolute romp over Pittsburgh, 38-3. Kansas City surviving a little bit against the Raiders, which seems to be a bit of a theme for the Chiefs over the past couple of years. Another theme heading into this game, Bills struggle with the Chiefs. Common, where do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to kind of set the stage. And to me, the number one thing that sticks out, I love betting. I love looking at lines. And the first thing that sticks out to me is that this is Patrick Mahomes' 42nd home start since he became the starter. He has been favored in every single one. This is the first time that a Patrick Mahomes-led Kansas City Chiefs team is an underdog at home. Depending on where you look at the game, some books have it at 2.5, some have it at 3. Chiefs are basically a field goal, 3-point underdog against the Bills. This to me is just crazy to think about. I mean, it's not maybe crazy when you look at how good the Bills have done, but just on the sheer thought of the Chiefs are underdogs with Mahomes at Arrowhead, it is wild to think about. The other things to think about is, I mean, the two highest scoring offenses in the league, Kansas City, Buffalo, and the two best quarterbacks in the league. Mahomes leading the league with 15 passing touchdowns. Josh Allen right behind him with 14. Allen also leads the league in pass yards. The QBR stat, one of my favorite stats, they have identical 78.5 QBRs this year. Identical. 4-1, identical records for both teams. The only guy with the better QBR is Tua, and he's injured. So pretty much this is the game of the year, no question. I think it's going to be a total toss-up. I think that the offenses are very close. Kansas City scored 7 more points than Buffalo through the first 5 games. The big difference is that Buffalo has allowed 61. Kansas City has allowed 125. However, Tom, Buffalo's defense was better than Kansas City's defense last year, no question. Buffalo had a great defense last year. Maybe they're better this year, but that Buffalo defense had no chance in stopping Kansas City. All KC needed was 13 seconds in that crazy game, that crazy comeback. The big thing, though, is will Tyreek Hill not being on the Chiefs be a factor in this game? Because so far this season, it has not been a factor for Kansas City. You mentioned they've had a couple close games. it hasn't been the offense's fault. This last game, the KC offense balled out. The defense struggled a little bit against the Raiders. That's why it was close. So that is probably the biggest talking point for me. This is the kind of the big test for Kansas City. Do they miss Tyreek Hill? Do they not in a game like this against Buffalo? On paper, Buffalo might have an ever slight edge, but I also think there's something to be said about Mahomes and Reed at home, something to be said about the fact that Kansas City does have Buffalo's number. Kansas City's played in 4 straight AFC championships. They've made the Super Bowl twice. They've won the Super Bowl. Buffalo has not made the Super Bowl. So in order to be top dog, in order to be top quarterback, Josh Allen and the Bills must take out the Chiefs. I'm not sure they can do it. We'll see.
Yeah, I think that the whole Tyreek Hill question is kind of like an interesting place to kind of jump into because
Sure.
I forgot to like grab the screen grab off of Twitter, but I can't remember if it's like Mina Kimes if she actually had the stat or if she retweeted somebody who had it. But they compared yards of separation on routes run with Tyreek Hill and without Tyreek Hill, and basically it's about give or take a yard less. For guys like Travis Kelce, for Mecole Hardman, who are carryovers from the Tyreek Hill years. Obviously, with guys like Juju Smith-Schuster, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, they're new to the team. But the difference in separation, and we're kind of seeing that a little bit in the offenses as well. I mean, look at Travis Kelce, has 7 touchdowns, only has like 300 something yards. He's not getting as much separation because defenses are able to double up on him and focus on him more than they do Tyreek Hill. So I think Kansas City obviously still able to put up points because they have outstanding quarterback, outstanding tight end, the 2 most important skill positions probably to have an Andy Reid's offense. And then they're solid enough on the outside to still have production. They've been on and off kind of decent with the running game as well, which I know is an area of focus. But it doesn't surprise me all that much that Buffalo's favored. I mean, I'm a little bit surprised by how much. I figured it'd be one of those like by a point type of thing, kind of call it closer to a toss-up. I'm surprised that we're seeing the number get to about 3 because that's fairly significant. But then you look at what the teams have done. I mean, close win for Kansas City over the Chargers, obviously close loss against Indianapolis, close win over Vegas. Really, I mean, they blew out Arizona and Tampa Bay. That Tampa Bay game was not a 10-point game. If you look at kind of like the narrative over the actual numbers. Whereas you look at the Bills, they had one, fairly bad game with losing to Miami. But they've been blowing out people fairly regularly. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this one goes. I'm not really sure. Like, obviously, we're going to have to make a pick on this one.
It's 50-50.
But I feel more confident saying that I think there's going to be points than there is going to be a victor on one side or the other in the game, just looking at the injury reports and everything's going on. It's going to be exciting, to be sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just going to go ahead and make the pick right now, and I'll give you your floor as well. You probably know where I'm going. I mean, I'm going Kansas City. I've got the Chiefs red. I'm hopeful that my bias isn't getting in the way because, I've covered Kansas City's team. I've lived in Missouri, so I'm a huge Mahomes fan. I think that Kansas City at home has some weight to it, and I think on paper Buffalo is a little bit better team because of that defense. But it is just crazy because they say that you get 3 points for being at home. So Vegas thinks Buffalo is an entire 6 points better than Kansas City. I know you're talking a lot about blowouts, but this Rams team that Buffalo blew out is not the same team right now. You look at who Buffalo's blown out, like they've blown out teams they should blow out. The only I guess the Ravens game was close and they did win that one. But the Miami game was kind of their other close game and they didn't win the close game. You talk about the Chiefs and these close results. Well, guess what? They're winning them. So if someone's going to blow someone out, I think Buffalo is the more likely team to win in a blowout, but I think this is going to be a close game. And in a close game, I simply trust Mahomes more. I trust the Chiefs more. That is kind of where I'm going with this one. It's the age-old saying where sometimes 2 teams are close. One might be better, but for whatever reason, XYZ matches up better against this team. I know the Hill thing's going to be big. Again,
Yeah.
it's not fair to compare last year and what the Chiefs offense did against the Bills because Tyreek's not there. But Kansas City's offense has been very good against that Bills defense. And a lot of the other pieces are there. So I think Kansas City just matches up really well against the Buffalo team. Like, Buffalo might end up matching up slightly better overall against the NFL as a whole, but Kansas City matches up well against Buffalo. They've matched up well against them the last few years. They've had their number. I think Kansas City wins. I do say this with very little confidence. I'm in a word confidence pool where you pick 1 through 16. This might be a 1 or 2 point game. The Bears and Commanders is the other one because I don't even know. The very polar opposites. One game full of scoring, full of great teams. The other one, maybe not as much. But I like Andy Reid in this game. I look for Andy Reid to make some play calls. Look for that. Ken Dorsey will be tested. Buffalo's new offensive coordinator. I know he had that meltdown when they lost earlier this season. So let's see how he does in this pressure situation. The only thing to say is that how is this game not on primetime? It is not a primetime game on Sunday or Monday. That is a little bit shocking. But I'll go Kansas City 34-31. A lot of points. Very close game. Definitely for Kansas City. Hopefully they get that kicking situation figured out because Harrison Butker being hurt. They had their new kicker made a great kick, missed a kick. Then he missed another one. They got the ball because of controversial calls. So many controversial calls left and right in that game. I'll talk about that in Statement of the Week. So I'm not going to we don't have to go over that whole Raiders game, but that was definitely a doozy. We'll do that later in the show. But give me Kansas City in a close game. Mahomes proves himself. This game, by the way, could be the number 1 seed in the AFC. Could decide that because they're both 4-1. This is a tiebreaker game. This could also decide the MVP race because I think Mahomes and Allen are going to be right there for that MVP race. The team gets one more win, one head-to-head win. You say, I beat this guy earlier this season. Winner of this game likely gets home field in the AFC. Winner of the game likely has the quarterback that wins MVP this year.
Absolutely. I think, probably no surprise, a little bit of devil's advocate. I'm going to go with the Bills on this one.
I figured.
For a couple different reasons. I mean, obviously it's a tenuous situation because Tre'Davious White, their outstanding cornerback, has already been listed out for the game.
That doesn't help.
But the biggest difference is really, Tyreek Hill. I mean, talking about a guy who's not even on the Chiefs being important to this Chiefs game. I mean, looking at this divisional playoff matchup from last year, Tyreek Hill led Kansas City in receiving, 11 receptions, 150 yards. He was the one that Kelsey kind of set up on that final play that got Kansas City in position in overtime to win that game. Or I think it was to get them to overtime. It was something where it was, because the three of them were so in sync.
The field goal, yeah.
It was the field goal to tie, yeah.
Yep.
So that was that's a really important piece of chemistry that's not really there. And then another thing that I noticed just looking at that stat sheet, Stephon Diggs, 3 catches for 7 yards. If I'm picking something that is more likely to happen, I think it's more likely that Stephon Diggs will have more than 3 catches for 7 yards in this game. And of course, Gabe Davis coming off of an outstanding game last week.
My fantasy team. Let's get it.
Massive game in that divisional playoff matchup last year. I think that the Bills are just clicking better on offense. I think their defense, even without Tre'Davious White, might be pretty close to on par with Kansas City. But basically, the thing that a lot of folks around the NFL have been saying is that Buffalo is building its defense to stop Kansas City. Except Kansas City doesn't have one of the key components that the Bills have been keyed in on, which is, hey, beat up Travis Kelce at the line and then try to box Tyreek Hill. If they don't have that extra responsibility, I think that their defense will actually do a bit better this year than it did last year in the past couple of matchups with Kansas City. So obviously, doesn't help that it's on the road, doesn't help that your outstanding cornerback is injured, but I do like the Bills with a slight edge in this one.
Do you have a score?
I don't have a score, but so long as it's more than 27-27, I think I'll be happy.
Okay, so the over-under is 54. That was my next question.
Yep.
Again, off the top of my head, 54 seems like a pretty low total. I didn't actually have it in locks of the week originally, and I was just double checking my phone. I was like, is that right? Only 54 points. So that might be a good total to bet the over on. So that will be definitely very interesting. Cannot wait for that game. It's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to have huge ramifications in the season, huge ramifications in our fantasy matchup. Top two guys in our
that's
fantasy
right.
league.
We are matched up this week.
We are matched up this week. We're both 5-1. I just hopped you, or 4-1, I guess. I just hopped you for tiebreaker points. So this will be a huge game. Gabe Davis, hopefully he does good instead of Diggs, because I have Davis on my team. So we'll see. Going to be a lot of fun. I do think we have another big game I wanted to talk about, the Cowboys and Giants. This game likely going to be Cowboys and Eagles, excuse me, likely going to be a lot different feel to it. I think Kansas City, Buffalo, we're expecting a lot of points, at least, and you and I are. Cowboys, Eagles expecting a lot less points. I think it's going to be a fantastic game on Sunday Night Football, though, for sure.
Yeah, we were kind of dogging the NFC East heading into the season, and
Everyone was.
look at it. It's Eagles 5-0, Cowboys 4-1, Giants 4-1, and yeah, this is obviously a massive matchup because it would be it's significant if the Eagles can continue to be undefeated on the season, get that leg up on the Cowboys. It'd also be massive if the Cowboys with Cooper Rush manning the quarterback position are able to grab a victory against the Eagles. I mean, I guess I can just jump right into it. Like I still feel like I can't really trust that the Cowboys are this good. I mean, you look at their point differential; it's not that great. I still don't understand. Like they're winning games with Cooper Rush at quarterback, but it doesn't feel like they're thriving in those wins. I mean, a win is a win is a win in the NFL. But if I'm going on who is playing better, it has to be the Eagles. I mean, look at every single game that they've played this season, winning them. I mean, a couple of close ones. Obviously, that opener in Detroit, pretty close game last week against Arizona on the road. Both of those road games pretty close. But beyond that, I mean, blew out Minnesota, handily won over Washington, comfortable win, hosting Jacksonville. I mean, single score game, but I mean, 8 points. It's a pretty heavy win. So Eagles at home. I don't necessarily think the Cowboys can do it unless there's some magic in this team that is just kind of like rallying around the fact it doesn't have its quarterback.
I think it's going to be a good game. I'm also going to take the Eagles, but I'm also a little bit surprised at this spread here. I think this is one of those games where maybe as a bettor, you bet the Eagles money line, then you bet the Cowboys spread, and maybe hopefully you hit both, because 6-point favorite Philadelphia in this game. Eagles 5-0, Cowboys 4-1. These two teams are both doing it on defense right now. You look at the Eagles are 4th in total defense, aka least yards allowed, 7th in scoring defense, also 1st in forced turnovers. Dallas is 3rd in scoring defense and 6th in total defense. So both of these defenses are great. Teams are pretty even there. Ultimately, the difference to me is the quarterback position and the offenses. Philly, 135 points. Dallas, just 93 this year. Cooper Rush reports this morning are that he should start in this game, even if by some off chance Dak Prescott is a last-minute addition. I think Dak Prescott will have a little bit of rust, a little bit of injury. So going into this specific game with Jalen Hurts, who just set the record for most rushing touchdowns in the first 25 games of a career, he's got the edge here. He's also 7th in passing yards. So Jalen Hurts taking that next step, also passing the ball. So Cooper Rush, 4-0, 4 touchdowns, no picks, playing good ball. But look at the numbers he's passed for. 235, 215, 223. He just had 102 this last game. So it is a classic game manager, defense and running the ball. So he's almost getting a little bit too much credit at the moment. I think that there's a decent amount of quarterbacks. I mean, I guess he's not turning the ball over. He has to get credit for that. But I think there's, with Dallas's defense giving up 10 points the last 2 weeks, there's a lot of quarterbacks that would have won the last two games. I mean, they gave up, what was it, like not many against the Bengals either. They're giving up under 20 like pretty
Mm-mm.
much every game. So Cooper Rush definitely has been very helped by that defense. I do think Dak is the guy going forward. But I also think, though, there is something special. You mentioned, is there something special about the Cowboys right now? There is. The defense is special. They're finding ways to win. So I'm taking Philly to win the game, but a Dallas win wouldn't surprise me. And those 6 points there, Dallas defense that is great right now. Keep this in mind, too. Dallas beat Philadelphia by 20 plus both times last year, 20 or more, both meetings last year. Something to be said about the matchups. Again, I know the teams are a little bit different this year. Philly a little bit more talented with the additions. Dallas losing a couple receivers. So obviously Dak's not in the game, but more or less somewhat similar rosters.
Hmm.
And Dallas is a team that obliterated Philadelphia. So I'm going to pick Philly, but I am not as confident as you are. And I do like Dallas with the 6 point cover there on that Sunday night game. I do think both of these teams are going to make the playoffs, I think they're both playoff teams. This could go a long way in determining the division. I do think Philly wins the game and the division.
Yeah, well, I mean, you look at Dallas's success. I mean, it's all coming on the heels or on the back of this defense. I mean, gave up 19 points in the opener to Tampa Bay, but since then have been rock solid. It's been kind of incredible. They haven't allowed a 20-point game at all this season, which could hint to a different thing to pick in terms of if you wanted to place a wager on this game. I mean, I'm not going to
The
say
under.
6 points. Putting any confidence on the spread or anything like that. But I feel really, really comfortable saying that the Eagles are going to win this one because they're at home and because you look at this win of Cowboys over Rams. I mean, 22-10, but 7 of those points, or
Stupid
well, rather
score.
6 points, came off of their defense and then two
Yeah.
point conversion failing. So I mean, I know it doesn't work that way that if you take away points, yada yada, but 16-10 is a much more indicative way because also as a defense, you can't really count on your defense getting takeaways. I mean, it's not a sticky statistic that transfers from game to game the way that, say, passing yards might or something along those lines,
Sure.
because so much of turnovers and takeaways are random. So I really like the Eagles in this one. I mean, Jalen Hurts is playing absolutely fantastic. Yeah, Cowboys beat them last year, but the Eagles, as we saw, made huge, huge, huge investments in their
No
team
doubt.
for this season. So I really like Eagles at home on Sunday night. Again, I mean, this is true for just about every game except maybe that Thursday night one. A lot of fun games this week.
Yeah, no doubt. We didn't even talk about the Giants Ravens. That's another
Mm-mm.
good one. Also interesting that the Giants are at home and they're like a 5 or 6 point underdog in that game. So everyone's sleeping on the Giants. So that'll be a
I,
good game.
I think that's speaking more to the fact that they have a plus 10 point scoring differential.
You
So it
love the
suggests
scoring differentials
I
today,
do. Well,
Tom.
because
You
well
love
because
them.
it's indicative. Like, record is one thing because you can have one team that goes, say, 17-0, and if they win every game by 1 point, are they better than a team that might be, say, I don't know, like some other number, 14-3 or something like that, where they're consistently blowing out teams,
But
have a
what
couple
happens in the
missteps along the
playoffs,
way.
though? There's a lot of close games. So
Well,
I don't know.
sure,
I agree with you, but I think you're. It's also early in the season, and there's something to
yeah.
be said about winning close games. But yeah, I'm just
I think
saying.
that's
You're.
I
I'm
think
going to
that's a
call you
testament
point
to
differential, Tom.
point differential Castleman. I mean, if you want to
Yeah.
do, I mean, I know we're not like a betting show, but if you want to do futures or anything like that, Dable for Coach of the Year would not be the worst idea that one could have.
I think
Moving from,
lock it in right now. Hands down, coach of the year. Even if they go like maybe like 10-7 and get a wild
Mhm.
card, which is probably a realistic thing, he will be coach of the year.
Absolutely. Moving from one gridiron to another, we have a couple of big games in college. I mean, we have several big games in college, but we're going to touch on two
Two of them.
main ones. We've got a couple of top 10 matchups,
Hmm.
which are oh so rare and always, always fun to see. I mean, hopefully it's going to be better than the top 10 matchup of Ohio State and Notre Dame, but I think the bona fides for these programs are obviously much, much more qualified. And of course, it's going to start with SEC prime college football country. We have Alabama Crimson Tide against good old Rocky Top. This is where I missed that show we did where Drew picked Tennessee over Mizzou, and he's playing good old Rocky Top, and you're just yelling at him to turn it off.
And he was
Fantastic,
right.
fantastic man.
He was right.
Yeah, yeah. It's just a great. It's like every time.
Yeah.
It's just good old. So Tennessee, I believe they are hosting Alabama in this
They
one.
are.
Alabama narrowly escaping with a win against Texas A&M. Of course, Bryce Young is a massive part of why it was such a close game. I think it's still. I haven't seen any update on injuries, but I think it's still kind of uncertain on if he's going to play. So
Yep.
obviously that
Up in
has
the
to
air.
be where this matchup starts, and a huge factor in who we pick to win this game.
Yeah, I have this written down. If Bryce Young plays, Alabama wins. If Bryce Young doesn't play, Tennessee wins. That, I mean, it's as simple as that. Tennessee is doing amazing this year, by the way. Alabama 6-0, third in the country in the AP poll. They're actually first in the coaches poll. So interesting to see how different it is. Tennessee is 5-0, sixth in the AP poll, eighth in the coaches poll. This is going to be a great game. Bryce Young was desperately missed against Texas A&M. Their backup quarterback, really solid runner. Mr. Jalen had 83 rush yards. He had 3 passing touchdowns, but he also had 111 passing yards. 111 passing yards is not going to get the job done against Tennessee. 24 points, not going to get the job done. That A&M team is now 3-3. They were a play away from losing at home, Alabama. So Bryce Young is going to make a massive difference here. Tennessee, by the way, Tom, is first in the nation in total yards and second in the nation in total points, a little bit ahead of Alabama in both of those categories. Hendon Hooker, the quarterback for Tennessee, 13 total touchdowns, no interceptions. He can pass, he can run. He also has 3 great running backs who are all at about 5 yards per carry, all over 100 yards already on the season. It is a loaded Tennessee offense. It's going to be a rocky environment, Rocky Top, over 100,000 fans. It's going to be an epic game. Tennessee is a 7.5-point underdog. Whether Bryce Young plays or not, Tennessee will cover the line. It's going to be a very close game. It's going to go down to the last possession, and Alabama's going to find a way to win because that's what they do. It went down to the last minute against Texas A&M. Alabama, once in a while, has games maybe that aren't as pretty as others, but they find ways to win. If Bryce Young plays and is even remotely close, if he's like 80, 90%, he is one of the 2 best players in college football, along with C.J. Stroud. He is that good of a player, that good of a decision maker, that good of a leader. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's going to be a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. These Alabama quarterbacks, who, by the way, are doing great this year when healthy. Tua, Jalen Hurts, Mac Jones even last year did well. This guy's better than all of them. Bryce Young is the best Alabama quarterback I've ever seen. So if he plays, Alabama's going to find a way to win. But this Tennessee team is for real. They obliterated LSU. They've won some road games. It's a great team. It's a great quarterback. Tennessee seems to be back on the college football landscape. But I still think Alabama's going to find a way to win here, as they usually do. And he's going to play, by the way. He was a game-time decision last week, didn't play.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure, again, knock on wood, we hope he plays. You never know what's there, but my gut feeling says he is not missing this game. A&M was 3-2. Tennessee is undefeated. Alabama's not going into this game without Bryce Young. I would be shocked if he didn't play.
Yeah, and even with a backup quarterback who turned the ball over almost as much as he was completing passes, it felt like,
Sure.
Alabama's still able to win that game. So that's just kind of like a sign of the talent disparity between Bama and, say, Texas A&M. But you know me, I really like my Bama haterade. So I'm going to be going with Tennessee on this one, even if Bryce Young is playing. I mean, Hendon Hooker is absolutely outstanding. I'm looking at these statistics between the top, season leaders on each team. It says he's thrown 10 touchdowns, but oddly enough, it doesn't say anything about interceptions. He's been really good about
No
keeping the
picks.
ball on their side of the field. I think that's obviously that is a huge, huge, huge factor
Sure.
against Alabama because we've seen how many times over the years that basically the only time that Alabama seems to lose games is when the other team plays perfectly. So that's going to be a huge, huge factor. If there's even one interception on Hendon Hooker's part, I think Alabama absolutely can steamroll Tennessee because you cannot give them short fields, extra possessions. You have to maximize each and every time that you're going down the field. And kind of odd, it's been a while since we've thought of Tennessee as a top 10 team, a powerhouse team. Obviously, with the days of Peyton Manning, they were pretty good, but how does this program kind of adjust to that kind of pressure? I think it helps that they're at home, they're in a comfortable environment. But I think we've also seen at times, teams might get a little tight butt syndrome when it comes time to be playing these big games
Sure.
against big opponents coming in where, you're in front of the home crowd. You don't want to lose that early. Whereas Alabama, that program, the experience that Nick Saban has, obviously Bryce Young has experience as well of going into hostile environments and getting the absolute best shot that an opponent can provide. So if you ever to throw like likelihoods on it, I'd say, flip a coin 2 out of 3 times is going to be Alabama. 3 out of 4 is going to be Alabama. I'm going to bank on that small chance that Tennessee pulls this one out at home. In decent part, just because I want to see it, because
Sure.
I like seeing a little bit of parity. It would be kind of fun to see a super significant Tennessee and Georgia game, for example, later on in the season with some obviously deep ramifications for the college football playoff. But this is going to be a really, really good one. Let's see. Looking at the time, it's 2:30 Central. This week, I actually have like a little sliver of time in the afternoon to catch some college football before I have
Might
to go
watch
to
it.
work. So I'm
Yeah.
gonna I'm gonna get an early taste on that one. So
It's going to be
we're
great.
we're on opposite ends of that one,
I like that.
and moving into the next top 10 matchup. Number 5 Michigan, number 10 Penn State. And I have to be honest with you on this one, Common. I don't really know what to think going into this game because I'm looking, it's kind of struck me as a little bit odd, Michigan being top 5. And yeah, they've blown out a lot of teams, but they also haven't really played anybody by the looks of it. I mean, hosting Maryland on the road against Iowa and Indiana, certainly, I mean, those are Big Ten schools. So they have their own merits, but certainly not anything special. And that Iowa game was absolutely dreadful for 3 quarters, where it seemed like nobody wanted to score. On the flip side, we look at Penn State, on the road at Purdue, on the road against Auburn, home versus Northwestern. So they've played some, again, Power Five teams, but certainly not the top of
No.
those different
Auburn's not who they
conferences.
used to
So
be.
so it kind of leaves me in this position where yeah, we have a top 5 and a number 5 and a number 10 team, but it doesn't really feel that way. I mean, maybe you've been keeping a closer eye on these two teams throughout the season, but I feel like this one doesn't have nearly as much hype as a top 10 matchup should, because whereas Tennessee and Bama actually have pelts on the wall, so to speak, it feels like this is kind of a crucible, proving ground for which of these two teams is actually legit.
I mean, I think that's definitely true, but I also think you got to think of it this way, Tom. Just because you haven't played anyone, it's easy to it almost sounds, I don't know, and maybe that's not the way you're doing it. And again, I
Mhm.
agree it's a proving ground, but it almost sounds like you're knocking these teams because they haven't played anyone. But the teams they have played, they've taken care of business. They're both
Sure.
undefeated. I mean, you look at what these teams are doing, they're both great defenses. They're outscoring teams by 2, 3, 4 touchdowns most of these games. Michigan, I think the number 5 ranking is pretty fair. You could argue maybe they should be 6, maybe 7, but this is a team, again, I know they lost Aiden Hutchinson. I know they lost a couple other guys. I think the running back they lost off last year's team. But this is a Michigan football team that was in the college football playoff last year. They are the defending Big Ten champions. So an undefeated Michigan team, I have no problem with them at number 5.
Mhm.
Penn State, obviously also undefeated, also a very prestigious program. So it's going to be an interesting game. I agree with you. It's a really sort of a prove it game. But I think that Michigan has more explosiveness on their team. They're scoring 43 a game. Penn State just 34. I think Penn State just came off like a close win over Northwestern. It was like 17-14. So it just feels like Penn State lacks the explosion. I mean, I know they've had some high-scoring games, but again, against who? I just feel like Michigan's defense is going to have a field day in this game. Michigan at home, the better team. Obviously, the better coach, I think, as well. I think they've got a great coach. So I'm going to take Michigan. I do agree with you, though. This is definitely like a prove-it type game for both of them. But I got to go with the Wolverines because these guys, I mean, outside of like Georgia, they've barely lost the game the last couple of years. So it is a very solid team like the Wolverines in this one.
Yeah, I think solid is pretty much like the perfect way of describing these two teams. And in particular, I mean, I'm going to go with Michigan as well. I think it's a huge advantage that they are at home. And I mean, obviously, taking care of business, I really shouldn't be knocking that. It's more of those things where it's just like I haven't, it'd be nice to have seen these guys kind of like against a better team earlier in the schedule.
Sure.
That would just kind of help a little bit in terms of the narrative and everything. But I mean, looking at somebody like, say, a Blake Corum on Michigan and how he's been running so far this season, basically not losing anything with, not Kyron Williams. He was Notre Dame. I'm blanking on their star running back from last year who went to the NFL. But basically, I mean, winning the game with running and defense and doing just enough on passing seems to be Michigan's MO. And it'd be really interesting to see if they can do something beyond that. J.J. McCarthy obviously putting together a strong season. Clifford, of course, is a pretty good quarterback for Penn State as well. Guys,
they got a couple quarterbacks there at Michigan.
Yeah, they're
too.
not necessarily like NFL
Stroud.
prospect type of thing. Obviously,
Sure.
like that seems to be like the separating factor. This game is definitely going to be kind of who's going to be the best of the rest. Who's going to be kind of knocking for that spot? Should Clemson, Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State. Should any of them falter? Which one of these teams is going to be able to capitalize? USC, exactly. So this is going to be a significant game. I question how much of it is going to be, it's a top 10 matchup, and so whoever wins is going to move up in the rankings. But what have either team really proved to be where they are in the top 10 rankings? I think that's a little bit of a fair criticism, at least from a very passive outsider of the game. Certainly don't have any inside knowledge on that, but going to be a big one. Starts nice and early, 11 a.m. Central. So significant implications early on this Saturday.
In those early games, sometimes it's interesting to see who shows up in the early games because sometimes those early games, it takes the team a minute to wake up. So we will see what happens in that one. Just real quick, I just want to hit on this one. Our Mizzou Tigers. I didn't watch the game. I was in Europe on vacation. They came ever so close against Georgia. So that was crazy. And I think that Georgia-Tennessee game you mentioned, it's going to be big even if Tennessee loses because Tennessee, if they lose to Alabama, they knock off Georgia. They'll be in contention in the SEC championship. So we'll see what happens. But definitely this is kind of that time of year where we're starting to see teams ending non-conference season, and we'll find out who is for real, who maybe isn't. I think Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia, I think those three are definitely for real, but we'll learn more about Michigan, Clemson, and some of these other teams, USC as well. So can't wait to see that. And I'll talk about USC's game in betting locks of the week because 6-0, I think 5-5, 6-0 UNC is an underdog USC against 4-2 Utah. So that's a little curious to me. So I'll have that game in betting locks of the week.
Interesting. Well, as we talk about NFL and college teams kind of proving themselves as their seasons go on, MLB is right in the thick of the postseason. Just to do a brief recap on the postseason picture, remember this is the year where the top two division winners got bye weeks, and then the third division winner and the third best record division winner and three wildcard teams met for a little mini series, a little 3-game, no days off over the past weekend.
Sure.
So Tampa Bay with that last spot loses to Cleveland. Cleveland moving on 2-0. Seattle upsetting Toronto in Canada, also 2-0. Philadelphia upsetting the St. Louis Cardinals to advance, and then San Diego upsetting the New York Mets to advance as well. So kind of interesting how 3 out of the 4 wild card teams upending,
Sure.
or well, no, not necessarily. Cleveland advanced, and then Philadelphia upended the Central winning Cardinals on that one. But a couple of upsets, and then currently as it stands for the playoff picture, Philadelphia is up 1-0 on Atlanta. The Dodgers up 1-0 on the Padres, and then on the American League, Houston leading the Mariners 1-0, and then the Yankees leading the Guardians 1-0. So between the 4 teams that are kind of left standing common, obviously, one on each side. We got to pick the World Series winner as these series are going on. Who are you liking? Let's start with American League, if you like.
Okay, so real quickly, speaking of the American League, crazy how Seattle was down big against Toronto. They not only won that series, they were down in game 2 like by a lot. I think it was like 6-1, 8-1. I think it was 8-1 they were down in that game. So crazy comeback for Seattle. It was 3 out of 4, by the way. The underdogs, 3 out of 4 did win. The Guardians were the only home team. The home team got to host all the wild card games. So San Diego was an underdog against the Mets. We had the Phillies underdog against the Cardinals, and then the Mariners underdog against the Blue Jays. So you might as well flip a coin because upsets have been wild in sports. You've heard me talk about this on this program. I said last year there was more upsets than I've ever seen. This year there's even more across all of sports. And in baseball, upsets happen a lot. Last year, the Braves had the worst record of any postseason team without Ronald Acuna Jr. They won the whole thing. 3 out of 4 underdogs won in the wild card round. With that said, I am very, very knowledgeable that something could happen like that. But I'm going to go with the teams I think are the best because those are the odds. And I think in the American League, despite the fact that the Astros did end up getting more wins, I think the Yankees are the best team in the American League. To use a Tom Castleman stat, they had the best run differential in the American League, and they had only the Dodgers had a better run differential. Yankees have the best lineup in the AL, maybe the second best behind the Dodgers overall. But you look at the Yankees, they were second in the MLB, Major League Baseball, entire league, second in runs. Aaron Judge, probably the best hitter in baseball, maybe the best player in baseball. That's a whole nother debate between him and Ohtani that we can talk for hours. But Giancarlo Stanton, Anthony Rizzo, Gleyber Torres, Josh Donaldson. I mean, embarrassment of riches in that lineup. But their pitching has actually been really good. They're third best in the league in ERA. Nestor Cortez is an absolute ace. And they were actually third in the league in ERA despite a bad year from Garrett Cole for his standards. Still a solid season, but his ERA was a little bit higher than it normally is. Garrett Cole was back in the playoffs, delivered a gem against the Guardians in the first game. So the Astros obviously are a fantastic team as well. I think Seattle's had that crazy run. Guardians had that crazy run in the earlier series. But I think it's going to be Houston and New York, the two best teams matching up. And I just like New York's explosiveness a little bit more. I like their lineup better. Obviously, the Astros still have a great lineup, but they have lost some of those guys over the last couple years. Obviously, Carlos Correa is no longer there. So I think the lineup is still incredible for Houston, but a little bit less so than it used to be. New York's hitting and underrated pitching staff gives them the AL championship, and they're back in the World Series. Yankees haven't been in the World Series in a while. I think they do get back there this year.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I like how you said that. It's baseball, it's the postseason, anything can happen. Baseball's the one sport where I think that the regular season and the playoffs, the postseason, yield the two most different results because
No doubt.
162 is the ultimate crucible of which team is the best team, whereas playoffs are who can win a tournament, who can get hot on a short schedule. And for that reason, despite the fact that they are down 1-0, I'm going with a team that has never been to the World Series before. I'm going with the Seattle Mariners. I'm feeling
Okay.
they
Storyline
went
Castleman.
They went all in getting Luis Castillo from the Cincinnati Reds earlier this season, and he proved his worth with a big win over Toronto. And obviously, he's matched up with Houston today. Mariners, I mean, I don't know what they were doing pitching to Yordan Alvarez, or Yordan Alvarez, rather, who hit that walk-off 3-run home run. But the Mariners had the Astros in game one. Obviously, woulda, coulda, shoulda. I think that they can absolutely hang with and beat the Astros. And then, of course, the Yankees have, as you said, best run differential in baseball. How much of that is attributed to one player in Aaron Judge? And
in American League, Dodgers have the best overall.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, in the American League, how much does Aaron Judge contribute to that with the absolutely historic season that he has had? Although maybe not as historic as some people like to think. I really like what the Mariners are doing with their team, and I absolutely think that they have what it takes to upset not one but two teams to get to the playoffs, because I don't think the Guardians are going to be taking down the Yankees. But I think it's going to be fascinating. A franchise that has never been to the World Series, I think that they get there this year.
And then that young star Rodriguez is fantastic too.
Absolutely. On the flip side, I might actually be going the exact opposite with my pick for the National League. But Common, who do you like coming out of the National League?
Yeah, again, I'm going to set the stage. I just want to repeat this again. 3 out of 4 underdogs won in the wild card round. The Braves are the defending World Series champions. They had the worst record of any team in the postseason last year, and they are way better this year. So the Braves could very well win it. We might have a massive upset in the Padres, who just upset the Mets. However, I'm going to use my brain here, and I'm going to go with the hands-down best team in baseball right now and the best team in baseball over the last 5-10 years. The Dodgers won 111 games this year. Their run differential, Tom, 334, was almost 100 runs better than the next closest team, the Yankees. They had the best ERA as a team in baseball, and they also had the best run differential, most runs scored, So best hitting team, best pitching team. Best ERA, least runs allowed, most runs scored. They've got 4 MVPs on their roster. 4 MVPs. Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts, Clayton Kershaw, very much in their primes. Cody Bellinger, his game has dropped off a little bit, but he can get hot at any moment. He's hitting like 8th, 9th in the lineup as a former MVP, wherever they have him right now. It is a loaded lineup. It's a great pitching staff. They had 4 starting pitchers this year, Tom, with an ERA of 2.57 or lower. Kershaw, Anderson, Urias, and Gonsolin. Clayton Kershaw is getting the game 2 start. He is probably the best pitcher of this generation, maybe a top 5 best pitcher ever, and he's starting game 2 for the Dodgers. I mean, their team is so good, so dominant. They have so much playoff experience. They have so much depth. I think they booted Craig Kimbrell as the closer. Why? Because they can. Because that's how good they are. Because they have the ultimate option of pitchers, both out of the pen and out of the rotation, that they can do that to a guy who, has been struggling, but is really, if you look at the last few years, one of the best closers in baseball. And they're like, you're not good enough for our postseason roster. And they might bring him back the next series, and then he might dominate. That's just kind of how it is. So I like the Dodgers out of the National League. I do think that they are definitely more likely to make it than the Yankees. I think the Astros are a better team than anyone else in the National League. And I think that the Mariners, I do think there's something special about their team. I don't know that the Dodgers can be challenged. The Braves are the only team I can think of. But I think the Dodgers are just too good. Even in a tournament place, they're just a clear step above everyone else. That I think they're not likely to get upset. I look at it this way: they got upset last year in the NLCS. I think NLCS is when they lost. The year before they won. You can't win every year. They took a year off winning last year. They'll be back this year, and that leads me into the World Series prediction. Might as well get into it. I'm going to stick with the Dodgers. I mean, I think Fox and MLB are going to be very happy to have the Dodgers and Yankees in the World Series. You would argue, like, would they maybe rather have the Yankees and Mets, but the Mets are gone. So obviously, with who's left, that's kind of the dream matchup. Imagine seeing Clayton Kershaw against Aaron Judge in the World Series. That just sounds mouth-watering. So it's going to be a great, great postseason. Anything can happen, but I'm going to pick the two best teams, and I'll take the best team, the Dodgers, to win the whole thing.
Yeah, for me, I mean, it certainly would be a great storyline for the Dodgers to win the World Series in the season that they're, I guess like he is baseball. Vince Scully passed away in August of this
Yeah.
year, so it absolutely would be a perfect way for that season to end. And yet, not now that I think of that, I almost want to change my pick.
Uh-oh.
But
Storyline
uh, but
Castleman.
but I am going to go with the Atlanta Braves to not only come out of the National League but to win the World Series, going back to back. I mean, they didn't have Ronald Acuna for winning the World Series last year. Sure, they lost Freddie Freeman, but they got Matt Olson, another very capable left-handed power bat to play first base. It's a deep, young, experienced team. I mean, that's not something that you really get all that often, and it kind of harkens a little bit back to the 1990s, where the Braves won the division for a decade plus,
Hmm.
but only won the World Series once. I think that this time around, Braves are going to capitalize on the fact that they're here yet again, that they are a very talented team. I mean, they've been playing like 700 baseball since the end of May. They've been on an absolute tear after a little bit of a slow start to the season. I mean, obviously New York Mets fans and beat writers and everything are going to, um, cry about how bad their season went. But it wasn't that the Mets, blew it or anything like that. It was just that the Braves play at such an outstandingly high level throughout
Sure.
most of the season. I think that that continues into the playoffs and into the World Series where they top the Mariners. So yeah, I guess Braves kind of ruined not one but two storylines with Mariners have never even getting to a World Series and having a chance to win, and then of course Dodgers winning the same season that Vince Scully passed away. Obviously, I mean I'm more than good if that happens because I think that's what baseball is about. It's about the pastoral. It's about the story of the season, and I think that'd be a perfect way to end it, even if I think the Braves are very well equipped to ruin that.
I will devil's advocate you. We
Hmm.
spend all this time about how baseball is a tournament, how hard it is to win. Even I said it's hard for the Dodgers, the clear best team, to repeat. I just don't see someone repeating. I think it's very
Yeah.
hard in all sports. We almost never see a repeat in the modern era. I mean, the Patriots with Brady, I guess, were what, like 5, 6 years ago, when they were maybe a little bit less, where they were winning multiple rings in a span
Hmm.
of multiple years. Sure enough, I might pick the Warriors, but maybe I'm devil's advocating myself there. But I think in the NBA, a 7 game series is a little bit different than baseball, where there's more luck involved. I just don't see the Braves repeating because I don't think the Braves were the best team last year. I don't
Sure.
think the Braves are the best team this year. So for a team to not be the best team and repeat, I agree they're playing hot ball right now, but the Dodgers are playing hot ball as well, as are the Yankees, as are the Mariners, who have been red hot lately. So it's not like they're the only team that's been very hot down the stretch. So going to be a great postseason. Definitely, with all the upsets, it's probably going to be the Guardians who win it all because they're the one team we're giving no chance to.
Hmm.
But it'll be fun to see.
Absolutely. So we're moving from one postseason to another, albeit a very current postseason, to a far off in the
Future.
future postseason,
Sure.
as we're going to be touching on the NBA. As you mentioned at the top of the show, season starts next week, which is just kind of crazy to think about how quickly that has come up on us. And I mean, there's a lot, of course, that we could cover in the NBA, but what we're going to focus in on is MVP, best players, then, of course, the best teams out of each conference and the winner as well. So I suppose we can start with just the individual accolade, get
MVP.
MVP out of the way. I believe Luka Doncic technically is the odds-on favorite. You could go any number of ways. I mean, it's the same names every year because the NBA stars are so transcendent. Where you've got Luka, LeBron, Jokic, Giannis, Kevin Durant. You can go on and on and on. Common, who do you think is going to be the person who wins MVP this year?
Yeah, here are the odds. Doncic at plus 425, Giannis plus 600. One guy you forgot, Embiid plus 650, Durant plus 800, Jokic plus 900, Curry plus 1200. And then the outside one, if you're looking for some odds, and LeBron at plus 2,500. Like that, LeBron is not one of the betting favorites. And I think that might be a bet that might be worth placing. LeBron, by the way, was second in the league in scoring. I think they bumped him off because he just missed the qualifying games to be played. But at 30.3 points last year, 52.4% shooting, yes, a lot of it was in garbage time, but only Embiid had more points. Between all those guys, let's be honest, the NBA is unlike any other league in the world. That I've said this multiple times on this show. The seventh best NBA player and the best NBA player, the gap between them is so small. Like, I think Giannis, to me, if I had to pick one, I would say might be the best player in the league. But Luka, Embiid, Durant, Curry, Jokic, LeBron, I mean, these guys are like right there with him. Like, you can't say that this guy is significantly better than anyone else. So the NBA MVP race is absolutely wide open. I don't think there's one player who is the clear best player in the NBA. I think for the longest time, it was Michael Jordan. And then we had LeBron for the longest time in this era. But obviously now other guys have stepped up. LeBron has maybe lost like a half step, but I think he's lost a lot less than people think. But it's wide open. So I'm going to go gut feeling here. I'm going to eliminate some guys just because the most obvious guy to eliminate is Jokic, because he's won 2 in a row. They do not give you the MVP 3 years in a row. It just doesn't happen. Steve Nash's best season of his career was the 3rd season after he won back-to-back MVPs. Michael Jordan could have won the MVP every year. LeBron James could have won it so many times earlier in his career. Giannis, his best season was the year after he won 2 MVPs. So Jokic, throw him out the window. He needs to have the all-time greatest NBA season to really have a chance at this award because he's won it 2 in a row. Giannis, similarly, he can win it because it's been 2 years since he won it, but he has won it twice in the last 4 years. He's won Finals MVP. Storyline, I'm going to throw Giannis out the window, even though I think if I had to pick one player that's the best player in the world, it's Giannis, but he has a different standard he's playing to because he's won the award recently. Kevin Durant, he's been hurt a lot the last few years. I simply do not trust Kevin Durant playing enough games. LeBron James, I might place some money on it just because the odds are so high, but the Lakers, I think they make the playoffs this year. I really do. They'll make the playoffs, but the team is a mess. Are they going to win enough games? Like if they're a 7 or 8 seed, LeBron's not going to get the MVP. Even if he puts up the numbers we know he's going to be. So I'll throw LeBron off the MVP race as well. Stephen Curry, maybe is like the 3rd guy I'm looking at, but I think Curry plays on such a good team, and he's an older guy. I think they're going to manage his minutes a little bit. There's going to be some games where Curry and Thompson say, hey, Jordan Poole, Draymond Green might punch you, but we love you. Take over here, Jordan. Run the show. I think the Warriors got a very well-balanced team, so I'll take Curry off. So who does that leave me with? Luka Doncic. I think that's going to be, and Joel Embiid, the 2 that are left. Joel Embiid was very close to MVP last year. Again, is he going to play enough games? Because he got hurt in the playoffs this last year. Something about Embiid's lack of availability, as you would say, Tom, is a question mark for me. So he's the betting favorite. I think the NBA right now is looking at the next generation of players. LeBron and Curry, Durant, these guys are so amazing. They might defy odds and be great for another like 3-4 years. But even if it's 3 or 4 years, eventually, 5-6 years from now, they'll either be retired or they won't be the player that they were. So the next generation, I look at 2 guys as the top 2 players in the league and the clear faces of the league. One is Giannis. Giannis already has a Finals MVP. He's won a Finals. He's won 2 MVPs. Giannis is amazing. The other guy is Luka. Luka hasn't won any of these awards. So if you're looking at the NBA, that's a guy that they want to put their, the face of the league status on. And if these voters, if it's remotely close, they're going to jump on the Luka train. Obviously, I think Luka's defense needs to consistently improve. However, the MVP voters don't really look at that as much. And I think Luka, with the team around him, he's clearly the best player. A lot of these other guys have co-stars. I guess Giannis and Jokic don't really have one, but Jokic is going to get some better players back with Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. Giannis will get Chris Middleton, who's a good scorer. And then obviously Durant, Curry, LeBron, all these other guys, Embiid, they've got co-stars. Luka is the clear number one star in his team. It's going to lead him to put up maybe more numbers than some of these other guys. So give me Luka.
Yeah, for me, obviously, injury is something that once a player starts having injuries to kind of keep getting them. But I'm going to go with Kevin Durant on this one simply because he's going to be on a team that I think, last year they were in the play-in. I don't think they're going to be in the play-in this year. They had a lot of tumult and turnover from the start of the season to the middle of the season to the end of the season. The reality show that was the Nets was more entertaining than the actual team that they rolled out on the court. But I think this year, obviously as a team, they're going to be a lot better. They're going to have a better record as Kyrie Irving is going to be able to play in home games now. That's going to be significant. Kevin Durant's not going to have to worry about how temperamental is James Harden feeling today. It definitely feels like at this point, moving away from that troika of a big three of Irving and Durant and Harden, that it feels more like Durant's team definitely than Irving's team, rather. So I think, obviously Durant, when he's healthy, is an absolute MVP player, whether it's a postseason or an NBA Finals MVP, or if it's a regular season MVP. And I think that, he's somewhat long odds. I think he's like the fourth or fifth favorite, give or take. But I think that Brooklyn, if they're atop the East, and I think they very well could be with the investment that they've made on their team, picking up Royce O'Neal as a valuable bench guy. They're going to find ways to replace James Harden's scoring. And James Harden, quite frankly, wasn't that awesome of a shooter. I think that this is a team that is better suited to spot up shoot around Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and what they do with having the ball in their hands. So give me Kevin Durant and the Brooklyn Nets being, I'd say, probably like a top three team in the East, I want to say. And even if he's not playing all 82 games, even if he gets somewhere around like 70 or so, I think that's going to be plenty for the voters to say, yeah, go ahead, Kevin Durant, take this one. I think Luka obviously is a fantastic choice in the style of basketball that they play in Dallas, where he's kind of the fulcrum for everything all around him. Definitely, he's well-deserved as the favorite. And we'll see how much team record plays in, because that's kind of been a little bit of a knock on Luka and Dallas is, well, he doesn't really have a great team, so they're not really ranked high enough in the standings. But then again, Jokic wins it last year, despite the Nuggets being 6. And I think that was one of those things where the team was so bereft of talent. It was amazing what he was doing. So I definitely think Luka has a really, really strong shot as well for winning MVP. It'll be a question to see how much team record kind of gets factored in, as typically kind of like weighs a little bit more to the players who are on like those top 2-3 teams in each conference.
Yeah, real quickly, devil's advocate. I think Kyrie Irving, when healthy and when playing the last couple of years, has actually put up pretty close numbers to Durant in scoring. Mm-hmm. And I think if Kyrie is playing all these games, he's going to take some numbers away from Durant. And one thing about Durant, I'm not the biggest fan of some of his like Instagram, his tweets, some of his like off the field actions, but he's actually a very unselfish player. He's a guy who is willing to let other guys take shots, too much in some cases with Russell Westbrook. But I think the emergence of Kyrie Irving, who I think is going to be fantastic. I mean, he's a top 10 player when playing. I think that's going to take away some numbers from Durant. I think Durant will get 27 points a game, but Luka gets like 30 a game. Mm-hmm. That's a difference. And also Kyrie handles the ball. So again, how much do they look at the sheer stats? I don't know. They might recognize, look, Durant did have Kyrie there, but I think Kyrie's going to take away some numbers from Durant. That's my one thought, because I think Kyrie's going to have a huge season this year. Again, not one of my favorite guys off the court and the things he does, but Kyrie Irving is a phenomenal basketball player, and actually, we don't see him anywhere on these MVP odds. He should be a little bit higher, I feel like. So I just think Kyrie's going to take away some numbers from Durant.
Absolutely. Well, it'll be really fun to see, who's healthy, who's good atop the MVP race. This feels like one of those things where it's kind of enjoyable in the NBA that a lot of the times the guys we think that are going to be there at the start of the season are also there at the end, and we kind of get to see those narratives flourish as the season goes on. Another narrative, obviously, the big one that we're all going to be keeping an eye on, who's coming out of each conference, who's going to be playing in the NBA Finals. Of course, last year, the Golden State Warriors representing the West, the Boston Celtics representing the East. Certainly I think those are the two odds-on favorites for each conference. So, Common, are you going with the chalk on this one, or do you see an upset somewhere on either side of the bracket?
I'll start with the East. I guess I see a mini upset, but I wouldn't call it an upset per se.
Yeah.
I mean, the Celtics are the favorite in the East, but I think the Bucks are definitely coming out. You look at what Milwaukee did. They pushed Boston to 7 games last year, and that was without Chris Middleton playing there. Your boy Drew Holiday, you're a huge Drew Holiday fan.
Oh, my guy.
We saw his field goal percentages dip a lot when he was asked to be the number 2 scorer. Drew Holiday is a great defensive player. He's a good point guard who runs you into your offense. He is not a great scorer. He's a decent scorer, but he's better as a number 3 option. When he had to be the number 2 option, that really changed Milwaukee's team. Despite that, they pushed Boston to 7 games. I think Milwaukee is going to take down Boston this year. I think Milwaukee's got a better team. When Chris Middleton, the second best scorer, maybe the second best player in Milwaukee, comes back, he is worth a game in that series. With all those close games, he is worth a game. I think Giannis, Middleton, Holiday together are the best team in the East. Boston, literally, they had played a lot of close games. They were very fortunate last year. Obviously, they'll be without their head coach because of some off-field issues as well. We'll see how much that matters. It's got to matter a little bit, I'm guessing. And even if it doesn't, I think Milwaukee simply has the better overall team. Jason Tatum, he's a very good player, but I don't love him as a first-tier star. In the NBA Finals, he shot about 37%. He didn't show up. Giannis, to me, is a much better overall player than Tatum. And when Giannis gets his co-star, he's going to be much better with Chris Middleton. The Nets are the interesting team to look at, obviously, with Durant and Kyrie. The Sixers with Embiid and Harden, but too many injury question marks with Embiid and Harden. Similarly with the Nets, I mean, I haven't seen those guys all play together for that long. And to be honest, the Nets supporting cast, the Sixers supporting cast, not great. The Bucks actually have some good role players, not necessarily superstars, but they have guys who have proved to be big in big moments. So I like Milwaukee. I think they're the best team in the East. They are the second betting favorite in the East. I think they're 4th overall, maybe out in the NBA altogether. So give me the Bucks with a healthy Middleton making a big difference. The defending champions from 2 years ago, right back in the finals this year.
Yeah, for the Eastern Conference, this is going to be pretty boring, but I'm going to go with a repeat of the Eastern Conference champions. I'm going to go with the Boston Celtics because basically they're returning more or less the same team that they had last year with one key addition, Malcolm Brogdon, a kind of do-it-all point guard, shooting guard combo guy who's been fantastic so far in his career with Indianapolis, or with the Pacers, who play in Indianapolis, the Indiana Pacers. He comes in and gives them even more valuable depth, especially when you look at how short they were in the backcourt against the Golden State Warriors. That was one of those things where we saw a clear mismatch from our analysis, where Boston had the advantage in the post, but clearly uh, Golden State had the advantage around the perimeter, and you had Brogdon, who not only is a good ball handler, good scorer, good rebounder, he's good on defense too. And so somebody who can do literally all of those things is going to be really, really significant for this team. Um, Obviously, they're going to have to deal with the fact that Ime Udoka, who was a really, really good coach for them last year, is suspended for this entire season. I think we're still waiting details, but
Doesn't look good for
definitely,
him.
yeah, workplace violations and stuff like that. We'll see if their promotion within head coach can do that. But if it's somebody who was on the bench last year, certainly knows pretty much everything that they've been running. I don't think the X's and O's of it is going to be quite that big of a deal. And then, of course, getting a feel for how to run a bench, how to set up rotations and manage minutes throughout the season. You've got 82 games to figure that out. I think the Celtics, even if they might not end up because of some of that discontinuity, even if they don't end up as one of those top three teams standings wise, certainly feels like by the time that we get to the postseason, they will be rounding into pretty good form. As last season, I mean, they were in the playing game as of February in the standings and ended up as the second overall seed. So I definitely see that as an option for Boston. Of course, I mean, these are going to be some great rivalries that we're going to be seeing. I mean, the Atlantic Conference has three really good teams that can make it. The Central representing with Milwaukee. It's going to be really, really fun to see who's coming out of that.
Yeah, Tom, real quickly, devil's
Mhm.
advocate. I know I
Sure.
don't disagree with what you're saying about Malcolm Brogdon, but that's my point. As good of a player as he is, as good of a fit that he fits,
Hmm.
uh, Chris Middleton was not there in the playoffs. Malcolm
For
Brogdon
sure.
is not Chris Middleton. And I think Chris
No.
Middleton not being there in that series, I think wasn't talked about enough. I know it sounds like an excuse, but this is an all-star. And this is a guy at the end of the
Hmm.
game, as great as Giannis is,
You
he's
trust
not a
them.
mid-range shooter. Giannis is willing to let Middleton take a mid-range shot to win the game. And Middleton is a very clutch player. He's hit a lot of big shots for the Bucks in the playoffs, in the finals. I think he is such a huge addition that I just don't, in my head, and again, I could be wrong, but in my head, a team that pushed Boston to 7 games without Chris Middleton, he's such a huge addition that we're essentially adding an all-star to a
Hmm.
team that was a game away. I guess technically wasn't a game away from the finals because they played the Heat, but I think we probably agree the Bucks would have beat the Heat based on the standings. That's another debate in
Yeah.
itself, but like they essentially were closer to making the finals had they won that series. So we'll see. I just think Chris
Hmm.
Middleton is a better player than pretty much anyone says he is.
Absolutely. No, I think that those are the top two teams. I mean, I know Brooklyn gets sandwiched in there as the second favorite to come out of the East. I would flip them with Milwaukee. I think they're right up there with Boston. So it's going to be really, really fun to see how that shakes out. On the Western Conference side of things, obviously, Warriors, 3 seed last year. They are the favorite this year.
Suns
But
just
I'm
behind.
but I'm not so inclined to necessarily go with the Warriors. I think I'm going to go with a team that has a proven head coach, is returning a couple of their best players who were injured from last season. Common, do you want to take a guess at which team I might be picking to come out of the West?
Uh-oh. Say that again. Proven coach, players injured.
Proven coach, players coming back from injury that are going to be healthy and playing most of this season.
Oh no. The Lakers?
Oh no. Oh, same
No.
city.
Oh, the Clippers, of course. Oh no, you can't do this to me.
Ah,
Kawhi
don't
Leonard,
worry. Don't
Paul
worry, I won't.
George,
Don't worry,
Tyronn
I'm not going
Lue.
to do that to you. Of course,
Okay,
I'm
all right.
talking about the Denver Nuggets returning
Oh
Jamal Murray,
no.
Michael Porter Jr.
Okay.
I'm going dark horse again on this year. I
You
had
love
them.
that's your
Oh,
adopted team in the NBA.
that's one of my adopted teams. I really
Yeah.
like the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, Jokic is amazing, and you consider what he was able to do with not much of anything around him last season. Of course, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter coming back provides a lot of playmaking. And I think something that's going to be key is we see how important depth can be in the playoffs. I mean, naturally, rotations shorten up, but you're always going to need to have somebody step up in a big moment that's not one of your stars. A lot of the guys that are returning on this roster were playing in expanded roles last season, had to fill in for Michael Porter Jr., had to fill in for Jamal Murray. So I think that gives a lot of really valuable experience for this team. I think they're as talented as they are deep. And in a Western Conference that I don't feel is really as strong as the Eastern Conference is,
That's fair.
I think that they can definitely compete with the top teams, even though, like, looking at the betting odds again, let's see,
Warriors,
fourth
Suns.
favorite, goes Warriors. On Bovada, it has the Clippers as the second favorite, then the Suns,
Ooh,
and then it
I'm
has
looking at somewhere
Nuggets and
else.
Lakers tied at the
Okay.
same odds for making it to the NBA Finals. I think that the Nuggets can absolutely hang with any of those teams. They're different because they don't have necessarily that super athletic big man in Jokic, but I think that he absolutely is a difference maker. Of course, as we've seen, two MVPs back to back. I really like the Nuggets to represent the Western Conference in the finals this year.
So I've seen this Michael Porter Jr. story in person.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
I started covering Mizzou as a TV sports reporter right after he left, but we would track him. We would do his highlights. Obviously, as Mizzou grads, as a sports journalist who has covered Mizzou in the past, the whole Michael Porter Jr. saga of when is he coming back from injury? When is he hurt? It just banking on him being healthy is not something that I would do. Again, hopefully he's healthy. Hopefully he's fully healthy. But I'm not banking on Michael Porter Jr. being there healthy at the end of the season. The odds have proven that it's more likely
Sure.
than not that he'll be hurt. Jamal Murray is coming off a pretty significant injury. I think it's a legitimate question
Hmm.
to ask, is he going to be the same player that he is? Even if, though, Michael Porter Jr., Jamal Murray, Jokic, they're all at their best. They're all that they can be. I still don't see how they're better than the Golden State Warriors. I think the Warriors are the best team in the NBA. I think Curry and Thompson are a great duo. I know there's some question marks about Draymond Green and punching Jordan Poole. Obviously, Jordan Poole is younger. He's a better player. I think Draymond's overrated. Obviously, being on the Warriors makes his status bigger.
Hmm.
But as far as team chemistry, the thing about that is that Draymond is a guy that plays defense and passes the ball. He's never been a guy that would take 15 shots. That's not his game. And when he's cold, he's smart enough to know I'm going to stop shooting. So it's not one of these deals where guys are going to be like, we're not going to pass to an open Draymond. It's just not going to affect the game. This team has been together too long. Not to mention that scuffles like this happen. There's the famous time where Michael Jordan punched Steve Kerr and the
Hmm.
Bulls won the championship. This is not something that's like extremely rare. At some point, a team in a given 4 or 5 years, it's going to happen at some point. It's just that it happened to get out. Golden State has the best overall team. They have incredible depth. They have one of the best players in the NBA, if not the best, in Curry. Klay Thompson's a great shooter. And what I like about picking the Warriors, just like I do with the Bucks, it's clear roles. We have a lot of really good players, but Klay knows that he's number two. Jordan Poole knows he's in the wings, but Klay and Steph can let Jordan Poole take over when he has to. He's going to have a breakout season. Jordan Poole is going to make it a big three shooting party. Andrew Wiggins, former number one overall pick, he is fine being a great defensive player, a great rebounder, and a scorer when he needs to be. The Warriors have so much depth, and they're getting James Wiseman back at some point. Their one weakness that we talk about is rebounding, maybe shot blocking. The former number two overall pick can do just that. The Warriors in the postseason are unstoppable. These guys know how to win these games. They know how to win road games. They got a crazy amount of road winning streak in playoff series. These guys are so good. They're so clutch. They've been there. They have so much depth. A lot of the NBA is run by superstars. XYZ, this team has two or three superstars. The superstar goes down, the team is done. The Warriors have an incredible amount of depth that a guy like Klay Thompson can be hurt. Now, they lose Steph Curry, that's a different story. That's your
Hmm.
superstar. But they lose their second or third guy. Like the Bucks lost Chris Middleton. What happened? They lose early. if the Warriors are without Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole can fit the Klay Thompson shoes. So they have so much depth on that team that an injury to someone else doesn't hurt them unless it's Steph Curry. It does hurt them a little bit, but you know what I'm saying. Doesn't hurt
Yeah.
them a ton. So I like the Warriors to repeat. I like them getting to the finals. I like them winning in the finals. I really like their team, too, because Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, they work well with ball movement, catch and shoot shooting. Jordan Poole does exactly that. He's another dribbler. He's another playmaker. Their team and their flow is perfect. They've got the perfect offense with Steve Kerr for players like Curry, players like Klay, players like Jordan Poole. They're a perfect system. I think the Warriors get back to the finals and they win the finals. The outside pick would be the Lakers. I think if LeBron and Davis can stay healthy, the Lakers are a legitimate title contender. Obviously, the rest of the team is not good, but a healthy LeBron and Davis could be deadly. But obviously, how healthy is Davis going to be? Not banking on him being healthy either. So
we talked about Michael Porter. Now
yeah,
it's time to bring up the same
Same
obligatory
deal.
conversation about Anthony Davis.
Yeah, so give me the Warriors to make the finals. Give me the Warriors to take down the Bucks. This is what I felt like was going to be the finals last year when we did the postseason preview. Obviously, Middleton injury changed things a lot. This is going to be a great finals appearance, and it's going to be the two guys. I mean, along with LeBron, I'm a LeBron fan, but those are probably my other two favorite players, along with LeBron, Curry, and Giannis. I would love to see those guys battle it out in the finals.
Yeah, certainly two teams that haven't really changed all that much from last season. Absolutely have a great opportunity to battle out for the O'Brien Trophy come this June. So looking forward to the NBA season. Celtics over Nuggets. Yeah, Celtics over Nuggets. So yeah, looking forward to how that all shakes out. Moving into our locks of the week, been a minute, so we can do, I guess, like a quick recap.
Sure.
Or we can just jump right into our picks this week as it's still early on in the season.
No, we'll do a very quick recap. It was not a good week for me. So this was a couple weeks ago. I was in Europe, as I said off the top of the show. So got off to a decent start this season. I was 3-3, not great, but then I went to 3-6 because I went 0-3 the last week before my trip. I had the Chiefs -6.5 against the Colts. Colts won 2017. I had the Steelers +4.5 at the Browns. Browns winning 29-17. And I had Bears, Texans under 40.5. Bears won 23-20, 43 points. You were 2-1, Tom. Packers, Bucks under 41.5. You were correct. I was actually eyeing this game, but I couldn't do it. Brady, Rodgers in the same game. I couldn't do it. Should have pulled the trigger. Missed out on that one. Packers winning 14-12, 26 points. You had Lions, Vikings over 53. You got barbecued here. Vikings 28-24, 52 points. And then Ravens -3 at the Patriots. You were correct. Ravens winning 37-26. What you got this week?
Well, what I have this week is bucking an overall trend that we have been seeing in the NFL where unders are clearing at a much higher rate than overs are. But as I alluded to earlier in the show, Bills and Chiefs should be a lot of fun, a lot of points up on the board. Obviously, both teams have players very capable of putting up big plays, big points throughout the game. And like I mentioned, Tre'Davious White, top cornerback for Buffalo, he's already out for the game. Micah Hyde, their safety, he's on injured reserve. Jordan Poyer, their other all-pro safety, is questionable, so I think he's probably likely to play. But still, I really like points in this one. So I mentioned earlier, the over-under is set at 54 on Bovada, which is where I'm getting my info. So give me that one. Give me Chiefs and Bills, lots of points on Sunday. Sticking in the NFL on Sunday, I will take Bengals -2 over. Oh, it's gone away on me. Bengals -2. I like that one. I forgot what their matchup is, though. I didn't write that part down.
Saints at the Saints.
Saints, thank you. Yeah, Jameis Winston coming off of an injury. Saints just not really able to put up a lot of points, and their defense has been pretty solid, but I feel like the Bengals are bound to break out at some point. They have a lot of talent on that side of the ball, so I like Cincinnati, even though they're on the road in the Dome. That's one that's might be a little trepidatious, but I'll take the Bengals by 2 in that one.
Trepidatious.
And then Mariners on 13th, which is a Thursday. Give me the Mariners on the money line, plus 126. Luis Castillo is on the bump for Seattle. Framber Valdez is on the mound for Houston. Castillo, I mean, shut down a pretty potent Blue Jays lineup. He's been shutting down a lot of lineups this year. I look for that to continue in this one as the Mariners win. Covering -1, no, they're underdogs. So covering +1.5 was outside of our bounds, but not very many games are one-run games. Of course, I say that after they just lost a one-run game, but give me the Mariners to take that one on the road.
All right, but it'll be good. Interesting you said Saints actually put up a lot of points last game, but I do agree the Bengals, I think, need a win. They need a win, and I think they'll get one. -2, obviously not a very big spread. I did bet the Chargers -1.5 over the last weekend, and they won by 2 points on a missed field goal late. So it was kind of funny where I was like, well, I'll just do -1.5 instead of the money line, and it barely hit. So it's funny how those -2 lines can be very, very interesting for sure. All right, so I was tempted to bet the Chiefs Bills over at 54, but I don't want to put too much money on one game. I do like the Chiefs +3 against the Bills. It's the first time Mahomes is a home underdog in 42 career starts. Think about that. Kansas City, great at Arrowhead Stadium, underdog with Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL. Andy Reid, probably the best coach in the NFL right now. I know the Bills got a better defense. On paper, the Bills might have a better overall team, but Kansas City owns this team. They beat them in the playoffs the last 2 years. I like Mahomes and Reid. I think they're probably going to win the game. Total toss-up, but the extra 3 points make me feel really good about this game. As you mentioned, the Bills' secondary is a little bit banged up as well. So look for a big game for Mahomes. Look for Travis Kelce to put up more yards than he did last week. Maybe not more touchdowns, but look for more yards from Travis Kelce. Chiefs +3 against the Bills. I'm going with a lot of games we talked about earlier in the show. Even though I'm picking the Eagles to win this game outright, Cowboys have won 4 in a row, getting 6 points. Cowboys +6 at the Eagles. Defense has been absolutely electric. They've given up 20 points each of the last 2 games, 20 total. That's 10 and 10. So a 6-point spread is pretty big for a game like this. Obviously, I mentioned this earlier. Dallas beat the Eagles by 20 or more both times last year. Different teams, different rosters, but Dallas has seemed to have Philly's number in recent years. I'm still taking Philly outright, but I think Dallas can cover 6 points in this game, keep it to less than a touchdown. Low-scoring game, maybe something like 2017 for the Eagles. And then lastly, I'm going to college football here. This is one that was a little bit shocking when I looked at this. USC, number 7 USC at number 20 Utah State. Utah, excuse me. USC is a 3.5-point underdog. USC +3.5 in this game. They're a 6-0 team. Utah is 4-2, Tom. I don't get how that line is what it is. I get it. Utah's at home. USC did have a close game on the road against Oregon State, but overall, USC has been blowing teams out. Caleb Williams is a great quarterback. USC is a great team. I think they're going to not only cover here, they're going to win this game.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 13 spots ahead of Utah, and they are undefeated. Utah's got 2 losses. I even like USC +140 on the money line, but you're going to give me 3.5 points. For the sake of this show, I'll take the 3.5 points. Give me USC to cover that game. Actually, the game I feel best about this weekend.
Absolutely. So that does it for our locks of the week. That now brings us to sports trivia. I don't think it's been a minute since I've checked. I don't think I have anything like new or fresh or anything like that. But if you have one, we can definitely go ahead with that.
Yeah. So this is in theme with you, Tom. Your run differential, Castleman,
Hmm.
point differential, Castleman. I saw the Dodgers run differential this year, and it was pretty staggering. So I'm not going to go through the last 122 years of baseball to go through every single season. But at plus 334, it's fair to say that they had one of the biggest run differentials since the modern era of baseball, modern era since 1900. There's a few teams in the 1800s that had even bigger run differentials, but
Wow.
since 1900, what team had the biggest run differential? What was it? What year? What
Mm.
franchise? Dodgers plus 334. This run differential was better than that.
So the first one that jumps out to me is the 1927 New York Yankees.
You are very warm.
Okay, so then is it something like the 1929 New York Yankees?
Getting warmer.
31?
A little bit higher. Keep going. You're in the
Okay,
right
so I'm just
decade.
going to keep going by odd years because 1933.
Keep going with the odd years and going higher. A little higher in the 30s.
All right, 37?
39. I'll just tell
30,
you.
okay.
1939
1939.
Yankees.
Wow.
Can you guess the run differential?
Dodgers was 340,
334.
334. I want to. I mean, just pick a random number like 371 or something like that.
411. Dominant
Wow.
team.
Wow. And is that still technically? Well, no, I guess that's post dead ball era, but still, that is impressive. Talk about like just talent disparity.
Let me pull up this roster right now. I'm going to pull up the Yankees 1939 roster.
Because that's post Ruth, post Gehrig. So it has to be like Mantle, or no, not even Mantle, because he was like 50s, I think.
Pulling up the roster right now so I can confirm who they have. Joe DiMaggio was on the team.
Sure.
They don't have Ruth. They don't have any of those guys, which is crazy to think about. So Joe DiMaggio, the most recognizable guy, hit 381 that year, by the way. 381. That's not bad.
Not bad.
Bill Dickey had a great season. Joe Gordon. These are actually guys. Lou Gehrig was on the team as well that year, but he wasn't. Didn't play many games that year. Did not play many games. 36 years old. Only played 8 games that
Oh,
year.
wow.
So
Yeah.
Joe DiMaggio. DiMaggio was probably the biggest name on that team. But yeah, a lot of those all-time great Yankee names, maybe not on that team, but somehow that team put up an insane amount of runs. So there you go.
That's incredible. Yeah. Like I'm looking and like I'm not even seeing, like I don't recognize any of these names. That's incredible that they were able to do that with guys who I'm sure are really, really talented players. But the fact that they're not even like you said, like the super all-time greats. Like I wonder how
Yeah,
many. It's not really like listing like who won All Star. I'm on Baseball Reference right now.
sure.
Oh no, it looks like a lot of these guys were All Stars, and actually a lot
Of
are in
course
the
they were.
Hall of Fame.
It's the
I did not know.
Yankees. They have so many
One,
Hall of Famers,
two,
we lose
three,
track of
four,
who's
five, six.
who.
Yeah, 6 Hall of Famers on that roster, which is impressive for the fact that I don't
But
know any of them.
well,
Wow, that's a
Lou
great
Gehrig is
stat.
one of them and only played 8 games that year, though.
Sure, yeah.
So, but yeah, pretty interesting.
Wow.
Pretty interesting.
All right, statement of the week. Will you let off with a Yankees trivia? So I'm just going to jump right in with a Yankees statement of the week comment. If I were to offer you in one hand $73 and in another hand $62, which would you take? Which would you say is more valuable? Which one means more to you?
What was the? Did you steal the money? Did you cheat for the $73?
That doesn't matter. The fact is that
I know
I
where
have
you're going
73
here.
and I have
All right,
62. So
I'll
which would you
play
rather
along.
have?
73. I'll play along.
73 is absolutely more than 62, and all of this Robert Maris Jr. talking about the real untainted record, and Rob Manfred saying, let the fans decide what they believe the record is. No, the record is 73 home runs hit in a single season by Barry Bonds. Baseball needs to own its history. Steroids are a part of a decade plus of the sport's rejuvenation. There was the strike in '94 that drove a lot of fans away from baseball. Numbers were not great. Turnstiles were not turnstiling in the mid '90s as baseball was trying to get fans back. You know what brought fans back? The
Home
summer
runs.
of '98. Sammy Sosa, Mark McGwire, and their contest in the National League. And then after that, Barry Bonds, any number of other players who use steroids. And this is where, I mean, I've talked about this in other iterations in the past, particularly the fact that Bud Selig, the commissioner over this entire era, is in the Hall of Fame, whereas the players who played in this era, who are most synonymous with steroids and cheating, Mark McGwire, Barry Bonds, Sammy Sosa, are decidedly not in the Hall of Fame. I think also Roger Clemens, not in the Hall of Fame as well, despite pitching in that era and using steroids himself. So it's one of those things where, like, yeah, you can look at any era of baseball and find out that there is cheating of some kind. I mean, we're not taking anything away from the Houston Astros. They're still World Series champions. They're still going to have players that are possibly going to be in the Hall of Fame, despite winning a World Series in a year where they were found to have used technology to cheat, steal signs, and alert their hitters as to what pitches were coming. I mean, we can talk about even earlier than that, greenies and amphetamines being used so players could give maximum effort every single day, just increasing their endurance. Cheating is just part of baseball. You know, it's the saying,
Yeah.
if you're not cheating, you're not trying to win.
Sure.
And sure, you can say, you know, whatever you want about how a number is achieved. But I mean, in an era where a lot of players were using steroids, none of the other ones hit 73 home runs. Don't get me wrong, Aaron Judge is incredible for hitting 62 home runs. It sets the American League record, which is significant. But to kind of spark this whole debate about, oh, you know, who's the true home run king, what have you. I mean, are we going to say that Babe Ruth doesn't have 714 home runs because he didn't play against black players, for example? You know, where do we draw
Yeah, but
lines
the
with, you know,
fences were
what's
also
real, what's
way
not
back in
real?
Babe Ruth's era. I would devil's advocate that and tell you that Babe Ruth had to hit deeper home runs. Like he didn't have that
Sure.
short porch in Yankee Stadium. Babe Ruth
Well, yeah,
had
but like,
450 to center
well,
at
yeah, but
Yankee
he didn't
Stadium.
have, you know, but he didn't have necessarily the best talent around. He was playing against half of a talent pool, even less if you
Sure,
consider, you know, Latin players and what have you. So you can pick and choose any part of baseball's
sure.
history and
No,
say
that's
there's
fair.
something unsavory, there's something that gives someone an advantage, fair or unfair, against their contemporaries. But the simple fact of the matter is no, it's not up for fans to decide. It's an objective fact that 73 home runs were hit in one season and 62 were hit in the other, and one is more than the other. So that's my statement of the week, is a little bit of a point out the obvious because it feels
Yeah,
like it needs to be pointed out.
I am like so divided on this whole steroid topic just because you know me, Tom. I'm a very opinionated guy, and I
Hmm.
typically will pick a side and I'll argue it to the death. And I think there's so much to like unravel here. Like obviously, like I think Barry Bonds before steroids was already a Hall of Fame player.
Sure.
You know, would Barry Bonds have hit 73 home runs without steroids? Probably not. But then again, yes, other people were using it. It's part of the game. So I'm very torn on this, but ultimately, I guess I agree. I don't feel like I don't know.
I
They
don't feel
haven't
good that they did these things,
they
but
they
the fact
haven't
is that they happen. It's not us to
they
judge.
haven't wiped away the 73 home runs off Barry Bonds' statistics. So
Hmm.
statistically, right now, I guess you're right. Barry Bonds is the single season home run king. I mean, literally, the evidence and statistical data will say that. So I guess I
Yeah.
agree. I don't feel like I
You don't
don't
have to feel good
yeah,
about it.
I don't feel good about it, but I agree. My statement of the week. Usually, I like to go controversial. I don't actually think this one is that controversial. I also think it's very cliche, but it's something that we have to address because it feels like everyone's talking about it. So maybe we
Mm.
don't lead off the show talking about it, which is our way of maybe not going into this too much. But I think these roughing the passer calls in the NFL are getting out of hand. And I think this is an important sticking point that we need to separate these two from each other. The whole Tua situation, where the concussions happened and it wasn't handled properly, versus the Tom Brady pass interference call and the Chris Jones on Derek, not pass interference, roughing the passer, and the Chris Jones on Derek Carr. Those are different plays. It's not you either care about quarterback safety or you don't. There's a fine line, and there are different points here. I am all for concussion protocol. The Dolphins maybe didn't follow it. That has to be addressed. I am all for these hits to the head. You hit the quarterback in the head with your helmet, you hit anybody in the head, penalty every time. Flag, flag, all the time. However, football is a violent game. One day I become a father. I don't know if I want my kids playing football. I'm not sure. That's another discussion to have. But it is a violent game. These NFL players have made the decision to play football. It is also a very fast game. The game is also centered around offense. The rules favor the offenses. As a defensive lineman, you're trying to sack a quarterback who many of these quarterbacks are just as athletic as you. Some of these quarterbacks nowadays can run around like crazy. Game is moving at a very quick speed. If you clearly, blatantly put your head out or you lay a quarterback out late, yes, you can't hit a quarterback late, penalize it every time. However, as you're moving, as you're tackling a quarterback, you got to bring them to the ground. That's how you tackle. That's the part of football. So these these plays where we're protecting the quarterback are getting out of hand. Quarterbacks are always going to get hurt. Everyone's going to get hurt. No matter how much you make the rules, it's a part of the game because football is an inherently violent game because the point of the game is to bring your opponent to the ground. How do you bring a strong NFL 200-plus bodied man to the ground? You hit him as hard as you can. That's just how the game is. So I want the quarterbacks to be protected. I want these hits to the head to be away from the game. I want these late hits to be penalized. But some of these roughing the passer calls are out of hand. You got to be able to tackle the quarterback. Defenses have to have a chance to make the plays. For the Chiefs, they did win that game. There was also a questionable call later in the game about the defensive holding. So it's sort of evened out. Maybe the betting line, people who bet Chiefs -7.5, maybe you're upset because that could have been a touchdown. Raiders get a field goal, whatever. At the end of the day, the Chiefs did win the game, so that call didn't decide the game. But the Bucs-Falcons game, who's to say? Falcons get the ball back. They just need a touchdown. They've scored back-to-back drives. Atlanta might have won that game if it wasn't for that call. Probably not. The Bucs probably make a play, but you don't know. These should not be deciding games. You should have a right to tackle the quarterback. The quarterback is the special one, but you got to be able to tackle him at some point. So they got to revise these rules. They're giving too much leniency on protecting the quarterback. It's getting out of hand.
Absolutely. Common sense is something that I feel we need more of in all officiating. So I'm a fan of a sky judge, so to speak, somebody who is watching the game from the perspective that we are, which is on a monitor and able to therefore see things that people on the field might not always have a clear vision to. So I think that's important, and I think common sense. So one of those things where it's like, what's roughing the passer? You know what roughing the passer is.
Yeah, no doubt. And real quickly on the sky judge point, VAR in soccer, video assistant referee, that's exactly what they have. Yeah. They have a referee who's actually watching the entire game. He's paid to do it. So he's actually not only watching a specific call, he's watching the whole game, watching the flow of the game. He's got the cameras. He's able to make those decisions, able to alert the referee. And VAR isn't perfect, but here's the deal about close calls. Someone's always going to be upset. Someone's always going to be upset. One side is going to be upset. There's going to be a lot of 50-50 calls. You put in like a VAR in soccer, it's not going to get it right all the time. But on average, it'll make the calls better. Completely agree on the sky judge. Basically a football VAR. I would love to see that. We have guys who do that basically as analysts for these networks. We've got like Mike Pereira and all these other guys who will tell us on the TV broadcast but we should have actual people doing this in the NFL booths. Completely agree.
Not nearly as lucrative, though, as that Fox or CBS or Amazon contract is. I can tell you that much
No,
for
I bet.
sure.
I think that's going to do it for us today, Tom. I know you've got some work conferences the
Oh,
next
for
couple
sure.
weeks. It may be
Hmm.
2-3 weeks until the next show. But whenever it is, I can't wait to get back into it. And I'm excited we're here today talking sports. Going to have plenty more good stuff to talk about this year. Looking forward to that. Thank you again, Tom, for co hosting. And thank you to all the folks who listen and watch this show. You guys are awesome.